The idea for the design of the slow house was to create a building that looked and felt like it could be a standard home, something that was similar to a home that people might have lived in before needing to use the slow house. In creating the slow house, the idea was to find a balance between fast and slow, ensuring that the building felt like a home, although it was to act in a way similar to short to mid-term accommodation for multiple families at any one time. The design is a simple rectangular shape, something that from the street would look like a standard house front. This was important to try and make the experience for those using the slow house feel comfortable and feel like they were at home. The overall design, however, was to have a somewhat modular design. Having the ability to be replicated at different scales was important to the design. The design can go from 6 to 2 bedrooms without affecting the overall design of the house, allowing for simple replication depending on the client's needs. Creating zones in the house that met the balance between public and private was the next goal. The idea was to maximise available space while taking into consideration privacy of the occupants as well as its site conditions that may affect the design in 2050. The roof of the slow house doubles as an outdoor area. This was important for multiple reasons. It firstly allowed for the occupants to have an outdoor area that would be unlikely affected by the 2050 site conditions, secondly by the site constraints imposed by the neighbouring properties. Utilising this space is also important for the future of architecture, as it can be used as a green area, improving the life and experience of its occupants. When inside the slow house, the next important feature was to make a comfortable and safe environment for its residents. To get the right balance, it was important to consider what people would be okay with sharing with strangers and what they may have issues with. The main areas such as lounge areas, dining, kitchen, relaxation areas and outdoor areas would all be common space and shared by all who live in the slow house. The areas were enlarged to allow them to feel spacious without cramping the occupants together. Areas such as bathrooms and bedrooms had to feel private. These are areas that people may not enjoy the idea of sharing with strangers. However, it still had to feel like a home and not a hotel. For this reason, the design contains 6 bedrooms, with the idea being that if a family of 4 were to occupy the slow house, that the parents would be able to have their own bedroom and so with the children, allowing for some sense of normality. The rooms, however, are large enough that they could suit multiple bedding options to allow for a greater amount of people to occupy each room. Each room also contains an ensuite. This design feature felt important for privacy and sanitary reasons. It felt like a necessity to ensure that each occupant had their own private ensuite. Each room also has a private balcony attached. This addition was to allow for occupants to have an area that could be used as a relaxation zone, a place where they could wind down in the privacy of their own area. By the end of the century, rising sea levels will flood more than 500 coastal cities, affecting 1.5 billion people worldwide. Some estimates predict surging sea levels will rise by 2 metres by 2100. In creating the slow house, the consideration of the environment of 2050 had to be taken into account. How often will it flood, and how will these floods affect the city? With the design for the slow house, the idea was to mitigate the flood issues entirely. The idea originally was to build up the land that the slow house was to be built on. This idea, however, still had its limitations. With rising water levels, the severity of flooding in 2050 could be much more severe. This led to the solution: what if the building acted like a dock in rising water? This type of architecture is being explored all around the world currently. The idea being that the building acts like a ship and floats on the water, or the building is built atop a buoyancy device and connected to vertical guidance poles similar to that of a dock. This would allow the building to float atop rising floodwater, becoming an amphibious house. This principle could also be used to make larger floating islands that could be connected via a modular type design, eliminating the risk of flood damage. The amphibious house by Backer Architects in England is a prime example of the dock-like system. The design was developed according to the Archimedes principle. The house's mass and volume are less than the equivalent of water, and that creates buoyancy. A slow house could take on this system as a potential solution to rising water levels.